Paul Russo, head coach of the Emory Henry Wasps, joined me on the Sports Buffet podcast. Emory Henry has Lynchburg coming in this afternoon. We talked with Coach Russo on Friday about his team, much more. Paul Russo, head coach of Emory Henry on the Sports Buffet podcast.
Paul Russo, head man of Emory Henry, joins me here on the Sports Buffet podcast. Big one for the Wasps this weekend, and we'll talk about Lynchburg in a few minutes. But, Coach, let's kind of review the season as a whole. A big road win this past week, too, at Roanoke. Talk about what's been going right for your team.
That was a really big win for us. The Roanoke rivalry with us has always been made for some pretty interesting games. And we played really well. You know, the season, we've still got a reasonably young team. We've only got one senior, and we play with two freshman guards, so we've kind of been on a roller coaster. But have had some good wins, and Roanoke was certainly a solid win for us, because of the program they have and the job that Paige Moore does over there.
You know, it seems to me like the ODAC is a tough league to get better in, and I know you guys are young and are trying to get better, but it's a tough league to get better in when the top is not getting any worse and when they're getting better. Talk about the challenge of coaching in the ODAC.
Yeah, no, it's quite a challenge, and, as you look at the schedule, you try and find wins, and it's tough. I mean, you can't find them because everybody's good, and I think that's what makes it special is that not only, as you said, the top is always, ranked in the top 25, but from top to bottom, it's really, really good. And there's really good players. The difference between the high levels, the ODAC D3s, and some D2 and low major Division I, there's not a lot of difference there. They're really good players, and the coaching is second to none for sure.
Well, and I take it, too, that, being in the ODAC, you've got to recruit guys that could go to D1 schools. You just can't recruit guys that want to keep playing at the D3 level. You've got to recruit some guys that might fall through the cracks, right?
Oh, there's no question. And I think the reality in college recruiting in general is that everybody has to recruit a level up. The mid-majors want the high majors, and the low majors want the mid-majors. D2 wants D1. We certainly, in this league, need to be recruiting scholarship kids, and that is the challenge because the league is flooded with kids that could have played at the Division II level or low Division I level. So recruiting is certainly a challenge. I hear all the time, from coaches, high school coaches, we have a D3 kid, and I'm not really sure what that is. We need Division II and Division I kids to win at this level because they're in the league. I can assure you that.
Let's talk a little bit about your pedigree, too. Obviously, having played at Emory and Henry under a legend in Bob Johnson. How special is it to coach at your alma mater, and what did you learn from Coach Johnson that you still employ today?
It's really, really special, and I think it shows itself, in recruiting, because when you're selling a place, and that's really what recruiting is, it's a big sales job. When you're selling a place, it comes from the heart. I really believe in this place. I believe in what it does for students. I believe what it does for student athletes. So when I pitch it to prospective student athletes, it comes from the heart. So I think that is an advantage for us. My assistant as well, Gerald Christian, is an alum, so that certainly helps. Playing for Coach Jay, he has been a huge part in my growth as a coach, and I think one of the consistent things that we've tried to pass on to my teams that I've taken from the teams that I played on and the teams that he coached is the amount of effort that you need to give to be successful, win or lose, taking care of the things that you can control, and that is playing hard, and your approach to the game. That's one of been pretty much the staples for this program is that the teams have played really hard, and we hope that we're carrying on that tradition right now.
For people who may not be familiar with you guys now, but are more familiar with Coach Johnson's era of teams, and I remember towards the end of his coaching career, Emory really ran and gunned, however you want to put it, ran and shot
right.
A whole lot. How similar is the philosophy now offensively still to what it was then?
It's not very similar at all, to be honest with you. Every coach is going to be different. We tend to think that we are modeling some of the teams prior to the run and gun system of Emory and Henry, where we really try and hang our hat defensively, work into the shot clock to get a good shot. So the pace of the game has certainly slowed considerably, and we've really focused on the defensive side of the ball here. That took some, we had to recruit some size because the running gun kind of left us pretty small, and there certainly was a change in emphasis as we switched styles. But I think the same thing that has remained, whether you're scoring 120 or you're scoring 70, is the effort. And again, whether you're hanging your hat on the defensive side or the offensive side, playing hard is the consistent thing here at Emory Henry that we're trying to impart in our guys.
Is it really difficult to be a slowdown team in the ODAC? Because I look at, Randolph and W&L, who I've seen, they seem a little more meticulous with their offense, but you look at a Wesleyan and a Lynchburg, and it's almost like they just want to get it and go. How tough is it to be a slowdown team when you're playing against one of the teams that wants to really get out and run?
It is, and I think in college basketball in general, I think tempo is the biggest. Who can impose their will in regards to tempo usually determines the outcome of the game. When we're playing a Virginia Wesleyan or even a Lynchburg who really wants to get up the floor, I think whoever's speed the game is played at favors whoever that is. Lynchburg wants to play fast. If we get into a track meet with them, we're in trouble. So again, with pressure defenses of Wesleyan and Lynchburg, it can be difficult. But again, the better we get at playing slow, the more tempo we can control, and that tends to favor us, as it does W&L, as it does Randolph's, who play similarly slow.
I'm going to kind of roll a two-part question into one. Give me the strengths of your team in your opinion, and tell me something that you're doing better now than maybe you thought you would do, or better now than the year started.
I think we're defending much better than we ever have. I mean, if you look at scores, we're holding people to much lower scoring totals than we have in the past, with a couple of slip-ups. But I can see significant improvement, and I think it shows in our record that we're defending much better than we've ever had. I think shot selection is a big one for us. Not taking the first open look and really working to get the best look that we can consistently throughout the game. So I think defensively, certainly, and our shot selection has improved. But again, we still got a long way to go.
Is it hard to recruit defense? Because it seems like, obviously a lot of kids want to shoot the three and run and gun, but you talk about with you guys being maybe a little more defensive minded. Is it tough to find that guy who really wants to hang his hat on defense?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. I think kids don't grow up wanting to play defense. They want to play offense. They want to get their name in the paper, all that stuff. But when they get here, everything that we do, even from the way that we play pickup in the off season, we tell our kids we want them scoring the game a little differently. For example, we tell our kids to score pickup in the off season by who can get 5 stops as opposed to who can get to 5 points. And so I think really when you get here, we try and brainwash the kids that this is what we are going to hang our hat on. So again, we look for it in recruiting, but the reality is, kids want to play offense. But I think the good teams and the teams that win consistently at all levels defend, and they defend really well.
Yeah, I like that. Back in the day when I was playing video games and, playing the old baseball games on Nintendo, I always wanted to pitch rather than hit. So, I'm kind of with you on that defensive guy. Let's talk a little bit about the personnel of your team. Obviously, a lot of guys come from the area as well. Probably they should and will in terms of regionalized recruiting. But I know you got a special guy who came from New York. How did he find his way down to Emory and Henry?
We actually have a couple of kids. My college roommate, Jay Rosser, who now lives in New York, is a Lynchburg native, mentored some kids up in New York, helped coach, and he had told me about these 2 kids that were looking for an opportunity to get out of New York. Now, let me preface this by saying these same 2 kids had never left the city ever in their life. They don't have a driver's license. They don't know, nothing like that. They had never left the city. So he had driven them down. We had talked on the phone. They had driven them down. And, I was a little bit nervous initially because, like I said, this isn't, going from New York to D.C. This is going from New York to, the hills of Southwest Virginia. And to my surprise, they fell in love with it. They really, really fell in love with it. The community here has really welcomed them. I think it's a nice change of pace for them. And while they're still adjusting, honestly, to how technical the game of college basketball is, they're taking great strides, both of them. And I think towards the end of this year, you'll start to see, especially the one Armando, start to really improve on the defensive side and overall production-wise.
I think you told a story at the ODAC Media Day about them seeing a horse when they came in town. Is that true, or was that just a funny story?
No, that's absolutely a true story. We were driving on the recruiting trip, and I had kind of seen them, because you see stuff like that all the time up here. I mean, there are people that ride on horseback. That's just not out of the ordinary. But as you can imagine, the kid from New York, we were on the recruiting trip, and I'm driving around town, and there was a man on a horse going to the grocery store, and the kid thought, needed to do a double take, but I kind of cringed, but, like I said, for whatever reason, they loved it. And it's been a good fit for them, it has.
Final thing for you, Coach. We look forward to having you on much, much more in the future. Lynchburg College comes in on Saturday. What worries you about Hillary Scott's group?
When we played at their place, I talked earlier about imposing their will and imposing the tempo of the game. They really sped us up. They forced us into a whole lot of turnovers, which has plagued us early in the year, especially we start a freshman point guard, and we have a freshman backup point guard. So those two really got sped up, which is a problem for us. So I think they've learned, having played since that was a long time ago when we played Lynchburg. It was November 30th when we played them. So I think they've grown up a little bit. We really have to control the tempo. We can't take the first shot that we see because I think that tempo really favors Lynchburg. And then we've got to get back in transition because they really shove it down your throat and try and shoot it quick. So if we can get stops, that tends to slow up the pressure that they'll apply. They can't press on the made basket. So we've got to get stops and be patient offensively.
Coach, definitely best of luck in that one and all the ones to come, and we look forward to doing it again in the future.
Yeah, thanks so much.